All right, welcome to evidence-based audio engineering and education. Sometimes this is episode 221, and this is reading Reddit. You guys, let me know if you guys actually like this. This may or may not be cool. We'll see. I think you always like the question and answer stuff, and we'll see. We got some new products coming out over at AIX DSP, and I'm going to be really excited to show that in the next couple days, but not too much right now. So hopefully we'll be talking about that in just a little bit, but for right now, let's go check out Reddit. So this is r/audio engineering. There's a good question right here. Why, when I increase the volume of some elements in my mix, the LUFS, loudness units, decrease, get quieter rather than increase? Shouldn't the LUFS get higher? And I'm going into these blind, so hopefully actually just answered, and that's what I'm going to read. But I'll give you my opinions, and you guys let me know how you think about these things. And let me check just get right to this. I can see the chat and everything. Sorry about that. Hey, perfect. Okay. Let me just read his description. So I'm working on a vid with 3 tracks, environmental sounds, talking, and background music. I leveled them so that they sound nice together, but then my mix sounded too quiet, even though if I turn up the volume enough, it sometimes clips. I bounced the audio to a new track and analyzed the audio levels. It adjusted each track and even audio clips volume, yet I just can't reach below minus 20 LUFS. I've heard the target for YouTube is around minus 14 LUFS, but I can't even get below minus 22. What can I do? Maybe just put a limiter on and push the gain, but then it will distort the signal a bit. Yes, it will. Why is it that when I increase the volume of many elements in my track, the LUFS went from minus 20 to minus 22? It doesn't make sense to me. If anybody can explain and help me understand, I'm using DaVinci Resolve's Fairlight, if that helps. Thanks for any help. I'm not super familiar with DaVinci Resolve. I see it being used as a video editor for a lot of people. I wonder how he's actually measuring this stuff, for one thing. But if you're talking about average level, you really could bring down average by turning up some elements, because I think there's some sort of crest factor measurement in this stuff. Let me see what people say. So there's 19 comments. But hey, it's okay. Look, I'm not gonna say it's okay if it clips. The nature of getting stuff up to these ridiculous volume levels that we want nowadays is that things are going to distort, and that's just how it is. People don't seem to object to that kind of distortion, but it is distorted. So let's see. Somebody says levels that hot are achievable, but only through careful balancing of peak limiting and compression. Loudness takes a while to get your head around, but eventually you can start to hear what it is you're listening for. I don't think any of this is true. All right. Just giving some basics about Fletcher Munson and stuff. This is important. He says, also your terminology. Minus 14 is hotter, so you're trying to be above minus 20 and not below. When you're talking about decibels full scale or LUFS or whatever, usually it's got a negative sign in front of it, a minus sign in front. And 0 is the highest legal level. Below 0 is minus 1, minus 2, whatever. So the bigger the number below 0, the quieter it is, not the louder. So I think he figured out. So he's saying a great example is phone recordings. They meter lower in peak level, but meter louder on a loudness meter than normal voice recording of the same peak level. The Fletcher-Munson curve is essential learning if you want to master this. It tracks how our hearing responds to the audio spectrum, how loud it is versus how loud we think it is. I don't know how helpful that response really is. He's showing them Fletcher-Munson. Somebody else is saying, so this is interesting. Bluegill 15 is saying, have I misunderstood your comment? Minus 14 LUFS is not hot and does not necessarily require any compression depending on the source material. That's true, But really, to get something up to minus 14 LUFS, depending on what you're talking about, is it short-term, integrated, long-term, average, whatever, it could be pretty damn clipped in order to get it there. Sorry, minus 14 is not quiet. But that's really where we want to be, right? In the K system, I think they were aiming for 14. Is that right? Somebody else, Theory of Everything says, the amount of limiting to hit minus 18 or even up to minus 14 isn't going to hurt. I mix a few shows that get clipped to YouTube. I mix those shows at minus 24 for SVOD, whatever this, on Netflix Max. And they just use a limiter to eat 6 decibels before putting any clips on social platform or YouTube. Sounds fine. My company does a ton of web content, and it's all minus 18. Somebody's got a link to the mastering show. Let's see. Okay, so here you go. You want the technical answer. This is where you go, because peak levels aren't necessarily going to matter much to a loudness equation whatsoever. Think about it, like super short transients that you may not even be able to hear. Why should those be taken into account for the loudness level? So he's saying, Noisy Gog says, LUFS has a gate in its measurement criteria. This is so that it ignores things that are too quiet to prevent spurious results when there's a lot of very low-level ambience. I don't think that's not the only reason. I mean, like I just said, super quick peaks and stuff that have no value on the loudness anyway. What that means is that quiet parts aren't considered in the overall loudness measurement. That's not quite true, but pretty much. What is likely happening is that as you're increasing the levels of quieter bits, you're now within measurement criteria in those quieter parts, so the average loudness appears to go down. That makes sense. Katie the Sound Lass says, minus 14 LUFS is the absolute limit YouTube will allow before it turns down the volume of your content. It's not a target to hit. Minus 18 to minus 22 LUFS is far more typical for spoken word content. If you need to hit a higher loudness target, then a compressor limiter would be the way to go. There's so much argument over this. I know people who just insist on just getting it way up there, and that there's an argument to be made that the loudness wars aren't over, that you still make these things ridiculously loud. It's like something like minus 8 LUFS for what's the thing, Spotify? Even though Spotify is like minus 16 or something is their LUFS target. Because these services will just turn it down. They won't apply dynamic compression, I don't think. I think they just turn the stuff down. And so they're arguing you should still just be cranking the crap out of everything, which is sad, but makes sense. So Smoking Fromage says, Skrillex songs on YouTube average around minus 4 LUFS, so you can throw your false facts in the garbage. And so Kid American, snarkily puts back, I love Skrillex's spoken word pieces. So let's see. I'm going to go minus 14. Try and play some audio at minus 22 LUFS and report back. So I guess if you want to know the technical answer to this question, it was just that, you are gating out some of the quiet bits. So now when you start turning things up now, those might get taken into account. So it's seeing the average level as quieter. All right. I have no idea what's in these questions. I'm just reading them. So I see one called Plate Reverb Only, It says, I have the Sound Toys bundle and it contains Super Plate. I don't like the Cubase internal reverbs at all somehow. Your opinion on using the plate for everything, only if I need some reverb room for something, of course. So mainly vocals and drums, rap music, by the way, or would you consider getting something like Valhalla too? I use Valhalla Vintage Reverb all the time. I love it. As our product, Iconic, is getting better and better, I'm using it more and more, and we have some seriously cool stuff coming out. Let me see if let me just, I'll bring up something, part of our internal stuff right now. So this is, we're working on a 3D spectrum analyzer so that you can match one reverb to another. I know you can sort of do this with convolution, but things get a little bit weird. And I want it to be so that you could make a shorter or longer one and still be okay. So we're working on something like this, but, whatever, free advertisement, right? I like the Valhalla stuff, but could you make a record with just one reverb? Oh, hell yeah. Think about, I know, you can't just always say, oh, back in the 1930s or whatever, but, really, sometimes the reverb was just the place you were in and there was nothing really you could do about it. I don't know what Soundtoys Superplate is like. Let me pull that up. I know not everybody likes plate reverbs on everything, but I don't think it'd be bad. Let me see. So Superplate brings a unique tonal character of 5 classic electromechanical plate reverbs into your studio. EMT 140, EMT 240, Audicon, Stocktronics RX 4000, EchoPlate 3. Looks like it has some decent variability. I think you'd, if you had to, you'd get away just fine with this. I mean, we had the big EMT plates at Vintage, and I often wouldn't really use anything else. Fine. I'm not. I like Valhalla Vintage Reverb. I mean, like I say, it's probably the one I use the most, but it really doesn't have the lushness and variability that I would expect. Though I think maybe I got some bias in my ears after not having hardware reverbs for so long, after giving them up way back in the day. Let's see. Somebody says plate reverb was the only reverb option available other than actual room ambiances or spring reverb for a long time. So, hey, why not? I love that plug, too. It sounds amazing. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. Soundtoys makes cool stuff. Are we counting chamber reverb as room ambience? Because most studios had a chamber back in the 50s and 60s. I don't know about most. Let's count the old oil drum while we're at it. Hey, audio, what was the name of it? There was a duplication service real close to Vintage that actually had a water tower above their place, and they used that for a reverb. The bathroom at Sun Studio. But I don't. Oh, I like this one. Okay, so I scream us, we all something says do it. That's what will give your productions a unique sound, and Superplate sounds incredible and very, very versatile. So why not? For what it's worth, Valhalla Room is only $50 and is similarly useful. I've used it even on classical recordings for that hall sound. It's very high quality. It is. I really like that reverb. Let's see. I worked at a studio that had an EMT plate and used it exclusively for about 10 years. Try it for a while. Yeah. We love making tools and we love buying tools, but sometimes being forced to just use one thing, you get pretty good at it. Somebody else, Jazz Crisis says, worked great from 1957 to 1976 or so. Yep. Okay, that one, I think we've done that one to death. Okay. Do all tape saturators tame transients, or is it just the J37? I'm going to put aside all the religious nonsense when it comes to tape. It's not just the tape. Okay, tape itself can only handle a certain amount of level. The electronics coming into it can only handle a certain amount of level. There might be a transformer there that can only handle a certain amount of level. So in the real world, there's things that have hard limits on how loud something can go through. You could call that taming transients. So the question, let me get to the rest of what he says. I know the J37 counts not only as a saturator, but as some sort of compressor too. Well, that's what a saturator is, really. Adding character to a sound. Oh, God, I hate that word. But also taming and reducing transients as well. I'm looking for more affordable options like the J37, but I can't tell if they have that same transient taming feature. Any recommendations? Really, you want to tame transients, put a hard limiter on there. Just take the free Recomp, the free version of the Reaper tools that you can put on any DAW. Let me pull up Reaper here. Hopefully the sound doesn't die. I've having trouble with OBS just dropping the sound lately, so I'll just put up Recomp. It'd be happy if you guys used our version too. So this is the replugs edition. You can use in any DAW. But our plugin, of course, will do this too. We got limiters and everything. And there's plenty of free ones out there. But here you go with recomp. Take the attack, turn it to 0. Take the release, turn it to 0. Take the ratio, change it to infinity. Take the RMS size and turn it to 0. Nothing's going to get by here. All right? There's your transient tamers. That's a hard clipper. If you want to do it softer, sure, the tape stuff will approach that. But, I mean, there's a million of those as well, too. There are plenty of tape emulator plugins. And like I say, I want to skip the religious stuff. So, in general, you can run it in Plugin Doctor and see what they do. In fact, maybe we'll do that one of these days. Just run a whole bunch of these things and see just how they limit. But the way tape was, as you got closer to saturating the tape, it would just stop really picking up anything hard. And remember, tape's also got a band limit to it, so it can't even pick up some transients that are really fast. And then the electronics ahead of it, everything else. It's not tape. I mean, you're really looking for a compressor. You might want the distortion of tape too. I really barely ever use that. I mean, we used to use tape to clip transients. I mean, there's nothing magical about that or secret. We just knew that it's not going to be able to put any more level in. And so you'd increase the apparent loudness because you're basically turning everything up and clipping off the top stuff, the peaks. And back then in CD, it was a little tricky, right? So that's a way to do it. Ooh, that's right. I got a doctor's appointment tomorrow. Ooh. All right. So let me read from some of these comments. One of the appeals of tape is how, when hit hard, it will tame transients. Well, I don't know about hitting hard. If something is claiming to emulate tape, it is likely going to do this as part of it. Note that the preference for saturated tape had more to do with engineers trying to get the signal as hot as possible to mask the noise floor, yes. The distortion caused by smacking it so hard was a preferable trade-off to tape hiss. Sometimes. The people got used to it. Much like distortion in guitar amps being a side effect of trying to increase the volume, maybe. Early amps were designed to be clean until people got used to hearing distortion and liked it. Well, I think in both cases, there were people trying to distort tape. But I don't think tape distortion sounds as good as people think it does. With guitar amps, people purposely wanted them to distort. They really liked that distorted sound. There's so much cool stuff to it. So, there was a tribe in sub-Saharan Africa in the 1950s that subsisted largely on UN airdrops of food. Among the food dropped by the planes was butter that turned rancid faster than it was consumed. Over time, the tribe began to let the butter ripen before eating any of it. Some people can get used to a lot of weird stuff. There's a thread I saw that talks about the popularity, awful smell of ripened canned fish. I guess it tames the transients. Okay. So Gainstager says, Gainstager, right? Transients can be tamed by many different effects, not just tape. Wanted to clear that up first in case that question inside your question. Compressors, clippers, distortion, saturation, etc. Tape effects just kind of happen to do a little bit of all of this. Very efficient, but not always as effective as actually using one of those specific effects. AKA, no tape effect will likely clip better than a clipper or compress more than a compressor. If drums are what you're looking to tame, try EQ first. Okay, here's somebody, I'm not sure what he's going to say, but I say this a lot. You can often use compressors to change the tone and EQ to change the dynamics. And I know that sounds completely backwards, but because a compressor is a dynamic range device and an EQ is a tone device. But there's certain frequencies in drums, and like they just brought up, that you just don't need. And if you chuck them, all of a sudden your signal is a lot less dynamic. It's a lot less super loud stuff compared to super quiet stuff. And same with the compressor. If you squish at certain parts, you can get rid of certain tones or add certain tones. Hold on 1 second, sorry. All right, sorry about that. We're working and busy, so if anybody's still sticking in there, sorry about that. Okay, so let me get back to like I say, you can actually change tones with the compressor by, especially if you got a key filter on there. Like if it's squishing at a certain thing, you can demud stuff with the compressor. So anyway, so he says if drums are what you're looking to tame, try EQ first. Shape the fundamental tones, 40 to 60 in kick, 200 hertz for snare, etc. Then work on the clicky transient high-end stuff. 1 to 4K is the range. 8K is another area that's less often transient specifically, but easily gets fatiguing. I'd say it's the opposite of that, but that's okay. And almost always requires some shaping as well. Bottom to top EQ ensures that you're addressing the tone and headroom. Top to bottom EQ often requires retweaking to fit things in the mix, in my opinion, but whatever works for you. I don't know. I'm trying to get rid of hard and fast rules that are subjective. So I like this. Try every free effect you can find. Lots of my favorite effects are free. Clippers are everywhere. Compressors even more so. Give them all a shot. Good luck. Now, again, not really. Since we are sponsored by ourselves, I'm going to show you. Okay, this GUI is a little bit rough right now. So this is internal alpha right now. But in our case, you could infinity to 1. Actually put a look ahead and clip the hell out of whatever you wanted. And then we got a limiter right here too. This is our intuition compressor. This is going to look very different in a little while. Let me actually let's just try some of this. So I'm going to be playing a little snare sample here. Let's see. I'm going to turn this down so it doesn't kill anybody. So right now, nothing's happening. No gain reduction. Actually, this release is taking forever. Sorry. Let me get rid of that. All right. So in this case, we got a limiter, hard limiter, soft limiter. Let me turn down this threshold. So we can clip out. Right? Soft limiters can be a little bit mellower, maybe. Actually did a video where I made like guitar distortion out of this. You turn these limiters off though. If you're doing the traditional compressor route, attack 0, release 0, RMS window if it's got a detector window size, turn it all the way down. Don't necessarily need this look ahead, but it'll work better with it. Let's I'll pull this up in a second. So I'm gonna start pulling this threshold down. And so I'm clipping out 6 decibels of stuff right here. Let me go back up a little bit. Okay, so like 6 decibels I'm clipping out. Let's try it without the compressor. Oops, sorry. Duh, I can't do it that way. Let's try no compression. It's so loud. Hold on real quick. That should not be... Again, this is why this is an internal beta, because sometimes there's bugs. Sorry. That wasn't a bug. I had it at minus at 0.5 to 1. Okay, so here's pretty much no compression. And there's a clipping 6 decibels off. And if we clipped off like 3 decibels... Oops, let me go the other way. You're probably really not going to hear this at all. And then you can do other things to it. You know, you could do some look ahead so that you know that you're going to clip this thing ahead of time. Again, you're not hearing much, right? But you could be sure that you're clipping the stuff off in the front. Anyway, so there's a lot of ways to skin this cat. Shut this up. All right. I like this. What do you think is special about a J37 and why? Yes. It's funny because so many of the plugins are like emulating things that we couldn't stand back in the day, and we were just wishing we could get rid of these things. But that's it. Marketing is a funny thing. Somebody else says tape emulators have EQs to emulate the lower bandwidth of tape. If your transient is as fast as one cycle of a 10 kilohertz wave and the tape EQ attenuate 10 kilohertz, then the transient will be attenuated. Yeah. The EQ also shift the phase, but that may increase transients as well as attenuate them. And I guess that effect isn't as prominent as the one above. A tape can change transients by saturating. Saturation is soft clipping of waveforms of higher amplitude, which is the same as taming transients if the transient is of higher amplitude. There are quiet transients too. Soft clipping is like a compressor with a soft knee, by the way. It attenuates louder signals more than quiet ones. Sort of. It depends. Somebody shows Chow tape model donationware. Let's take a look at that. Chowdhury DSP products. And so he's got a little tape modeler. Chow tape model is a digital emulation of a reel-to-reel analog tape machine. The original algorithm was developed to emulate the Sony TC260. Okay, see, it's so hilarious what devices people choose to model. I'm waiting for an Alesis 3630 compressor plug-in. But it's since been expanded to be able to model a wide variety of tape machines. Chow tape was originally developed as part of the Music 420 class at Stanford University. Oh, we've been talking about Stanford a lot lately, haven't we? Right? Kind of crazy that seeing their president getting canned or resigning or whatever for faking data, right? The project led to an academic paper, Real-Time Physical Modeling for Analog Tape Machines, which was presented at the 2019 DAFX conference. So, yeah, it says donationware. You get a little tape modeling thing. That's cool. All right. So I really like when people show this stuff. Okay. Now we got recording with plugins on or just raw audio. It says, I'm getting back into recording practice for my school, and we are getting into some basic things, and every teacher has said something different about recording with plugins enabled. I understand the effects about printing with, like, say, a reverb or something. I am more interested if there's any benefit of printing with EQ and compression mainly or channel strip enabled. That's the beauty of these real-time effects, right? You can monitor however the hell you want and not have to worry about getting stuck with some effect you don't want. I mean, back in the day, we used to record things to tape, or you'd have like engineers come in to rent the room just so that they could print your effects to their tape. But man, I don't want to make decisions then. I know a lot of people record things in the way they want to hear it at the very end of the mix, and I love to see people with that kind of vision. I don't have that. I actually don't. Even if I had that, I wouldn't like it. But I do like. There's nothing wrong with it. I really appreciate when I see people that are just that sure about what they're doing, and I mean, they're benevolent dictators, right? There's a lot you could say against what they're doing, but at the same time, I really enjoy watching people who work that way. But I'd rather not. The only benefit there would be of printing EQ and compression on some channel strip thing you got is if, the plugin you've got can't get close to that. I really don't believe there's that much stuff out there that you can't just emulate really simply with plugins at this point. But there's a lot of psychological factor to it. There's so much psychology and placebo effect in recording that this type of stuff is important. Let's see. Somebody says gear, compressors, channel strips, etc. and Unison plugins are worth tracking through, in my opinion. They generously sound better. I don't know. Prove that. That's just a bald assertion. I'm mostly using preamp saturation on the peaks and 80 to 160 HP filter, high pass filter when needed. Don't even pretend that you can't get a better high pass filter out of software than hardware. Compressors during tracking is mostly controlling peaks, and 1 to 3 decibels ain't going to make or break your recording. Some will smash their gear, but you have to be really sure of what you're doing to achieve. And that's the thing. If you're asking a question like that, you probably aren't ready to commit that hard. And there's nothing wrong with that. Ask questions. That's good. But if you have to ask, it's probably safer not to do that. It's hard to mess up a slow attack, fast release, a 3-1 or 4-1. That's not true at all. Even using a faster attack and higher ratio could be seen as gentle limiting. It could be. Or just use an opto for even more simplicity. Opto isolator compressor like LA2As or whatever, it's not that they don't do that much. They do it in a different way, and they do it with different timing. And they could drastically change your timing. So I think this is all horrible advice. I don't know what unison plugins are. It says gear, too long didn't read, gear and unison plugins generally sound better on the front end. You got to prove that with something. It's hard to mess up some saturation and compression on the peaks. I don't think. It depends what you mean by sun. This is so subjective. So SVRN Red, I don't know. Apologies if this is a stupid question, but why is it better to record through these instead of the raw vocals? It's not a stupid question at all. I don't have any hardware equipment, but still I would imagine that recording raw vocals would be better, as you can add plugins to make it sound better. Yes, that's why. It's true. That wasn't a stupid question. Is the coloration from these hardware compressors stupid coloration? What the hell is color? Again, I'm not going to go off on this, but color, character, all these subjective nonsense, weasel word terms, whatever. Show me it exists first. Show me that you guys are actually using this stuff in this way. Again, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but every time we test these mic preamps, all of the good ones sound nearly identical. There's not some magical super sauce they put on. They do sometimes distort differently, maybe a little bit, but you don't really use it that way. So this poor guy, he's asking this question because he keeps reading this crap on all these marketing sites that claim all this magic and stuff. So he says, is the coloration from these hardware compressors and EQs what makes it worth recording through them? No. Is the mic preamp not enough on its own, or is that a thing of taste? Mic preamps all sound the same. Don't let anybody tell you different. I know there's some caveats in there, but it's generally true. So somebody answers him, it's to make it easier down the line. 2 decibels gain reduction on an LA2A is very unlikely to destroy your signal. I don't agree. You're changing the entire timing. The same goes for a gentle low cut. Well, yeah. If you filter out the lows out of everything, you're probably going to have a better recording. I know it sounds horrible, but it's kind of true. Just leave your kick drum in there. And even the bass guitar, you're going to high pass a lot, probably. These small steps will make the vocals sit in the mix easier than just completely raw vocals. Besides, singing and listening through a nice compressor can make the singer perform a little bit better. Yeah, but you can do all that in plugins without committing it to tape. There's really no reason to commit this stuff to tape unless you don't have a plugin that can make the same sound. Arky Beagle says, you've made the decision rather than tending options for later on, so it's less stuff to do later. This is more of an old guy thing, so don't think about it too much. Do what feels best, yes. Hillbilly Eulogy says, if you're talking about capturing a signal raw, pre-analog to digital, and with no EQ and compression, there's literally no benefit to printing any DSP unless you're concerned about resource management down the line. And what he means by that is, like, is your computer going to be strong enough to put the same kind of plugins on during mixing as you are in tracking? And I think that's pretty much, nowadays, are pretty powerful. But even a $700 Mac Mini these days can handle pounds and pounds of plugins, yes. If you're talking about a particularly nice crunch of an overdriven pre using certain EQs to high pass filter and accentuate the sound that you'd have to send back out to later, or printing a bit of compression for the way it sweetens the source, yeah, by all means record it. Or if you have a patch bay with mults, print both, yeah. If you can, always take a dry. And like we say with guitar amps, right? I always try and take a DI of the guitar and record that if I'm also recording a real amp. Nowadays, I really don't like recording real amps, and I barely ever do it. Somebody else says, record with hardware EQ and compression on the way in every time. I would never say every time. So somebody answers him directly. Never, ever, ever record with hardware EQ and compression on the way in. Number 1, there's no undo. Number 2, outboard hardware is expensive and unnecessary. Number 3, why would you force a decision when tracking that might be revealed to be bad in the context of the song when you mix? Yes. Do it all in software and commit to absolutely nothing ever until the final mixdown. I like this guy's thinking. Somebody else says, though, 1, be confident in your decisions. Also, I still track the tape in some sessions, so I'm using compression to raise the noise for you. Well, that's you dinosaur. Because I'm tracking a studio with 500K or more worth of outboard gear. So yeah, if you're in a studio with piles of money and you think you can't replicate that sound with plugins, which I don't think is true, then go ahead, print all their junk in there. This is like the snob answer, though. I mean, so listen to this. We obviously might be in different corners of the music production web, but your advice is not how it is for me and my peers who have access to studios with substantial outboard gear. Look, you guys have seen me standing in front of piles of super desirable gear that everybody wants to get their hands on, and I don't use it because the software just works better. Sorry. All that to say, going nuts with compression as an effect on a track might be crazy unless you're writing it to a separate track, but everyone I know who's sitting in a room with real outboard gear absolutely tastefully uses the tools at their disposal. If I'm hired to track a band, you think I'm not going to use the EQ on the 1073 pre's or the LA2A, 1176, etc. before it's converted to ones and zeros? Lol. If you don't know what you're doing, then yes, all those apply. But Squibs replies, and I think he's probably right. Number one, you're human. You make bad decisions. Yes. Number two, I stand by that statement. Which part do you have issue with? And he was talking about outboard hardware is expensive and unnecessary. Number three, I don't currently have access to 500K of equipment. It's true. I also know that I don't need it. If you can show me empirical data as to how your hardware EQs better, compresses better, etc., than the digital equivalent, I will apologize and recant. Now, you guys have seen me drop this gauntlet a million times. They will not provide their data. So when this guy asks for data to actually prove the point the guy's claiming, the guy's never going to give him that. Okay, see ya. All right. He's never the true believers never provide their evidence. You know, they just go back to their book of fairy tales or whatever, right? They evidence is like a garlic necklace to vampires, right? To these guys. As analog is in effect, we can do it better in consistency in digital. So of course the old days gear snob dinosaur says, I don't know if you're just trolling or being real. But you know, this is always the old guard digging in their heels. Look, I was part of that old guard. And this is my penance, is doing stuff like this where we just expose these nonsense myths for what they were. Myths. So I got somebody coming by to play piano in a second. So I may be getting slightly interrupted here. Here we go. So somebody says, make decisions early and often is what they taught us at Berklee. Don't wait until the last minute to figure out where everything goes. Think about it at tracking time. There's some smart truth to that, but I'm telling you, think about something like a noise gate. If you gate something wrong on the way in, you are completely screwed. All right. Of course, you can just go write in your own drums or whatever, but man, that is a giant disaster. And once you know the stuff well enough, a compressor that you can't undo, it's not really any better. Most EQ, believe it or not, well, not most, but a lot of EQ things can be undone. But dynamic stuff, man, you are in trouble. Time-based stuff, you're in real trouble. And Berklee, don't get me started. Which Berklee are you talking about, by the way? They're all bad. Oh, bad. I'm sorry, but sorry, not sorry. Mixing shouldn't be about fixing things and making them sound good, but largely just setting levels. Wow. There you go. There's your Berklee education. Yeah, this is silly. Yeah, Squibs. Whoever the Squibs guy is, I like him. Says, I disagree so hard. Tracking is about getting good levels and capturing the source accurately. It's not about making creative decisions. EQ and compression are creative decisions. That comes later. I think it's somewhat about making creative decisions. I mean, you're deciding what to record or whatever. But I think I understand the point. He's saying I don't want to make serious mixing decisions right now. I mean, maybe you do, but I would rather not. The concept of printing effects just doesn't make sense. It doesn't save time, and doing it in non-destructively gives you an undo when needed. Look, anything you can print, like let's just say it's an EQ or a compressor, and there's something equivalently the same in software. Put that on your put that in your effects bus, and you're going to hear it the same way as you would have if you printed it, right? But you can get rid of it or change it if you want later on. What is the downside? In the box, so I'm going to continue with what Squibs said. In the box is not about never making a decision. Yes, it's about being able to undo decisions that make sense when your ears were tired and before the overdubs. It takes the same amount of time to EQ compress before or after the recording. So there is no time saving. You're just choosing to limit your choices if you do the former. Wow, this guy is full of rationality. Well, how's that? Wait until the last minute? You mean the mix? How does EQing compressing on the way in fix things? When you make decisions on the way in, you aren't playing with the full deck. If the energetic acoustic is heavily compressed to make way for the orchestra, the record label won't pay for. Good luck getting the dynamics back in when the song is reimagined as an acoustic number. Yes, think about how much you're limiting your choices here. It takes me seconds to put my preferred presets on tracks, and often they don't even need tweaking. Why would I opt to spend the same amount of time at any record dialing a setting I can't later change? Yes, wow, that guy's good. All right, so let me give you an upvote. Let me give you lots of upvotes. Upvotes. Is that how Reddit works? Am I clicking the right thing? I don't know. And so, of course, the religious got to dig in. I guess every album from the 1950s to 1990s was wrong in the way it was tracked. Would have been better if they waited and fixed it in the mix. Most of them did fix it in the mix. I don't know. As soon as multi-track recording came along, come on, they sure as hell did. Let's see. Is there anything? All right, this is gonna be my last one. I actually like this Reddit stuff, but I got so much to do today. So this is a question that says, microphones. Forgive me if this is not allowed, but I am thinking about purchasing the Art Pro MPA2 for $375. Do you all know of a better tube preamp for recording vocals under $500? Just right off the bat on this title, you see this is a victim of marketing, right? It has to be a tube mic preamp. The Art. So if you guys don't know, there's a bunch of people out there who believe that there's these super big magical differences between mic preamps. And so some enterprising people put together these tests where they would just record the same source through every microphone preamp that these guys were talking about, including some that these guys hated that said they were total pieces of crap. And when it came down to it, all these alleged experts, all these preachers and priests and whatevers could not tell the difference between the mic preamps, and often they pick this Art Pro MPA as the best one, and this is one that they notoriously, unanimously, all he said was just a piece of crap at all the recording forums, and yet it turned out that they liked that one the best. So, but when you're talking tube versus transistor, yes, tubes and transistors can do different things, but when they're operated in their linear range, they tend to be the same. You know, go ahead and measure them. We've done these tests. I think my website's back up at pipelineaudio.net with real gear measurements. You're not going to see any difference between the tube and the transistor stuff. So, you know, why he even needs his mic preamp anyway? He's probably got an audio interface with a perfectly fine mic preamp, and this will probably actually make it worse, not better. So he says, I've searched through 100 old forum posts and everyone thinks this is stellar for the money. The problem is most of these posts I found about it are old. I'm just wondering if this one still stands as the best bang for the buck tube preamp nowadays. I've tried to do my due diligence before coming here and asking, so my apologies if I missed the more recent threads. I suck at the internet. Any help is appreciated. Thanks all. So Rinio says, there's only one comment here. Why do you need a preamp? If it's just to put in front of your interface's preamp, it's not going to make any important difference no matter what preamp you get in this price range, tube or not. Look, it's not going to make any difference regardless of any price range. Price range does not matter here, unless you get something that's so crappy it's going to ruin it. The above is assuming your interface is of a reputable brand. It'd be hard not to be. If not, maybe a pre would make a difference. I don't think so, because if it's so crappy that the mic preamp sounds bad, then running an external mic preamp through the internal mic preamp is just going to make it way worse. a reasonable interface in this budget would make a lot more sense because you upgrade the garbage interface and get a decent preamp. Yes. Honestly, just save your money. Preamps are cool when you get into the nicer stuff. No, they're the same. But even then, the differences are pretty small or non-existent. All the reputable interface manufacturers are including preamps that are totally acceptable to make top 40 record with, so there's no reason to be concerned. That said, if you're trying to get a mic into one of your extra line-ins, then this would be appropriate application for a preamp in this price range. Again, though, if you need more mic inputs or line inputs or whatever, just get a better interface. All right, that's all I got for right now, but I actually like this, so let me know how you guys think.